Welcome back to Protege, where we break down the invisible skills that actually accelerate your career. I'm Molly Jaggers, and today we're getting into something I've been watching show up everywhere in org charts, in performance reviews, in the leadership conversations happening right now across industries. We're going to talk about what kind of manager actually survives what's coming, and more importantly, how to make sure you're building towards that. In January, Gardner put out a prediction that got completely buried, and you probably didn't see it. It landed the same week as those big January layoff numbers, and those numbers were loud. Here's what Gardner said. By the end of this year, 20% of companies will use AI to eliminate more than half of their middle management roles. Not by 2030, not sometime in the future, by this December. And I've been sitting with that stat since it dropped. Not because I want to panic anyone, but because there's something hiding inside it that I think almost everyone is missing. And if you miss it, you're going to spend the next 18 months building the wrong skills for a job that's changing shape underneath you in real time. And here's what I kept coming back to. It's not managers that are disappearing. It's a type of manager. And the question this episode is going to answer is which type you're currently training to become. Let me give you the full picture first. January 2026, 108,000 layoffs in the US in a single month. Highest January total since the Great Recession. AI cited explicitly in thousands of those cuts. And at the same time, the very same week, hiring announcements hit the lowest January total ever recorded. Not just low, record low. And it goes deeper. 66% of companies are reducing entry-level hiring because of AI. Junior tech job postings alone are down 67%. So what this means is the traditional path to your first management role, the pipeline that fed every management position for 20 years, is narrowing. And so is the definition of what that role looks like when you get there. So this isn't AI might affect your career someday. It's already happening in the organization you're sitting in right now. Okay, I know the noise on this topic is exhausting. Every week, there's something new. Another round of layoffs, another tool that supposedly replaces something, another think piece either telling you to be scared or telling you not to be scared. The binary is everywhere, and frankly, it's kind of useless. So you wait and you watch, and you hope your company is one of the ones that figures this out humanely. And I get that instinct, I do. Waiting is a strategy, it's just not a good one. Because the managers who are going to get left behind are the ones who didn't see this coming and didn't act on it. They're the ones who kept building the skills of 2022 while their peers quietly started building for 2026 and beyond. That gap is already opening. And here's why this matters more for women listening. That broken rung is still there. We've looked at these numbers a lot before, and I'm not going to just repeat it. We know that 87 women promoted to manager for every 100 men, and even less for women of color. So I don't want to belabor this fact again, but I do want to say something different about it today. That rung is still broken, but what's waiting on the other side has changed. A few years ago, crossing the broken rung meant walking into a well-defined job. Oversight, coordination, reporting, team management. You knew what you were working toward. And the path was hard to access, but the destination was clear. Now you're working toward a role that's being redesigned faster than the pipeline that feeds it. The coordination layer is being automated, the reporting is being automated, and the job you're fighting to reach looks different by the time you get there. So this isn't just a conversation about fairness and equity anymore. It's a strategy conversation. Are you building skills for the role as it exists right now, or for the role as it's actually becoming? Because those are two different answers to the same promotion. And knowing the difference changes what you prioritize starting this week. Before I get into this framework, here's what I'm watching happen. The managers who feel most uncertain right now aren't the ones who lack ambition. They're the ones whose mental model of good manager was built on a definition that's quietly, or not so quietly, shifting under them. And here's the pattern I keep seeing: a manager who was excellent at keeping everyone aligned, always the one who knew where every project stood, who could walk into any meeting and report out the full picture, finds that her superpower is now a dashboard. The AI Weekly Digest sends the same update to the entire team automatically. The status tracking that used to take 40% of her week happens in the background. And now she's being asked, what do you add beyond what the system already knows? Or take this: a team lead proud of her one on ones, regular, consistent, well run. But when she looked back at the last quarter's notes, almost every conversation was a status update. Where's the project? What's blocked? When will this ship? The human equivalent of a dashboard. High performing people doing the work that now a well configured tool now handles. And then there's the director who got celebrated, genuinely celebrated, for being the hub that everything ran through. She always knew where things stood. She was the coordination layer. And then the tooling caught up. Her value proposition got automated. Not because she failed, because the job got redefined. That's what I mean when I say the model is cracking. It's not that those skills were wrong. It's that the definition of complete just expanded. So here's what we're doing today. If you've been listening the past few episodes, when we first started mapping what AI is actually doing to your career path, today's the episode where we stop mapping the problem and start building towards the answer. And if this is your first time here, you have everything you need. The framework stands on its own. And what I want to walk you through, I've started kind of calling it the two manager split, because it tells you exactly which management skills AI is eliminating versus which ones it's making more valuable than ever. And then I'm going to give you 4 specific skills to build and one concrete thing you can start doing this week. So let's get into it. When I started looking at which management roles were surviving and which ones were getting cut, I kept noticing the same pattern. It wasn't random. It wasn't about seniority. It wasn't even really about industry. It was about what the manager actually did all day. Now, some managers, good, capable managers, were spending the bulk of their time on oversight and information management, running status updates, tracking project progress, scheduling, organizing, routing decisions through the right channels, compiling reports, being the person everyone comes to because you always know where everything stands. Now, let me be clear, those are real skills, genuinely hard to do well. And for 20 years, they were basically the definition of middle management. But here's the problem: AI does every single one of those things faster, with less error, and without needing a salary. I've reached a point where I've started calling this person the coordination manager. And the companies that are eliminating management roles right now, they're not eliminating leadership, they're eliminating the coordination layer. The manager's spending 70 to 80% of their time on tasks that AI now handles in seconds. And then there's the other type. And this is the one that's becoming more valuable, not less. I would call this person the orchestration leader. And the difference isn't just about what they do, it's about what they can do that AI cannot. They make judgment calls in ambiguous situations, the one where data doesn't give you a clean answer. They coach people to develop capabilities that no tool can replicate. They navigate stakeholder dynamics and build alignment where there wasn't any. They decide when to use AI and when to override it. And finally, they build a culture and psychological safety within teams that are increasingly human AI hybrids, which is the only kind of team that's going to exist in 2 years. Now, here's the part we're sitting with: the skills dismissed as soft for decades: coaching, empathy, sense making, ethical judgment. Those are the exact skills that are career critical right now. And to be clear, they were always critical. We just had the wrong label for them. They're not soft skills, they're power skills. And here's the part that should make you probably furious and hopeful in equal measure. These are the skills that women have been practicing for decades: the coaching, the sense making, the reading the room. You were told those were nice to have, while the coordination work got the promotions. Now, the coordination work is getting automated, and the skills you were penalized for are the exact ones that everyone is scrambling to build. And I'm going to do a whole episode on how the label soft cost an entire generation of women something real. But for now, sit with that reversal. This is a huge opportunity for women that we haven't really seen up until this point in the workforce. One more data point before we go into the specifics. The World Economic Forum's 2026 Future of Jobs report projects that 170 million new roles created by this AI disruption and 92 million are displaced. The displaced ones, predominantly coordination heavy. The new ones, predominantly judgment intensive, coaching heavy, and human centered. So let me be clear, you're not fighting against AI. You're deciding which side of the equation to put yourself on. And here's what I'm watching in terms of how this actually plays out. There's a type of manager I keep seeing getting caught flat footed. Not because they're not talented, because they were great at coordination in the way organizations used to reward. The VP who was always the most informed person in any room. The director who could orchestrate a complex project across 5 teams without dropping a single thread. Or even the team lead who ran the tightest stand up in the building. And then the tooling caught up. Project Tracker replaced the stand up. The AI Digest replaced the status report. And the pipeline visibility that used to live in one person's head now lives in a shared dashboard that anyone can check in 30 seconds. In my last role, I was watching this one manager, extremely capable, consistently high performer, who had built her entire professional identity around being the coordination hub. So when the organization rolled out AI workflow tooling, her first instinct was to stay involved in more of the tracking, not less. She thought visibility meant being present in every update. And what she didn't see was that the leaders who were getting tapped for bigger roles made the opposite trade. They'd handed the tracking layer to AI and used the time it freed up to be in rooms where strategy was being set, coaching their teams into new capabilities, making the judgment calls their peers were still routing through email chains. So the ones who were thriving, they made a different decision about what their job was. Not in a big formal way, in the small, weekly decisions about where their attention went. That's where this split happens. And that's what we're going to build toward next. All right, so now you know which type of manager is being built for the future. The obvious next question, and it's the one I had to work through a bit, is how do you get there? What does becoming an orchestration leader look like in practice, week by week, meeting by meeting? So I landed on 4 things. The first skill is directing AI work, not just using it. Most managers using AI right now are using it for productivity. Summarize this meeting, draft this email, clean up this doc. And if you're still in that first level of building your personal AI fluency, learning the tools, figuring out your workflow, it's the right place to start. We've talked about that whole arc elsewhere, and this is fine. But know that that's become table stakes at this point. The skill I'm talking about here is the next layer. It's not about whether you use AI, it's about what you do with it once you're in the seat. This orchestration leader treats AI like a capable junior colleague. They give it real assignments. They evaluate the output critically instead of just accepting it as a blind truth. They also decide when to trust it and when to override it. And this is the part that really matters, they use the time they get back to do the judgment work that only they can do. Think about this like creating the competitive moat for your career. And here's the test I keep coming back to. When you use AI to save time, what do you do with the hours it frees up? Do you default to handling more coordination, more status updates, more organizing, more tracking? Or do you use that time for coaching, decision making, or stakeholder conversations you've been avoiding? If it's the former, you're just a faster coordination manager, so the shift hasn't happened yet. And to break that cycle, we can start going into skill 2, which is talking about judgment velocity. Now, when we're talking about judgment, AI handles what's checkable, Humans handle the judgment intensive piece. We all know that by now. But here's the risk no one's talking about. If you've spent years letting AI or other established processes make the easy calls, your judgment muscle gets soft. You stop being practiced at it. So the shift is this: stop asking, what does the data say? And start asking, what does the data mean? And what do we do about it? The analysis is cheap now. Anyone can get the analysis. But the interpretation, the decision, the call when things are ambiguous, that's what you're there for. That's what can't be replicated. Here's what this looks like in practice. Say you get a report that says a project is on track, green across every metric. But you were in the room last week. You saw the body language. You know that the tech lead is burning out and the client relationship is fraying in ways that don't show up in a dashboard yet. The AI says green, your judgment says yellow. What do you do with that? Or even this: you're in a team meeting and your manager announces a new initiative. Everyone in the room nods, but you've been paying attention. You noticed the last two projects with the same framing quietly got deprioritized within a quarter. So again, the slide says priority, but the pattern you've identified says wait and see. Do you go all in, or do you hedge your effort and keep building the thing that's actually shipping? That's judgment velocity. It's pattern extraction, pulling signal from noise when nobody handed you a summary. It's connecting the dots across conversations, decisions, and shifts that aren't on anyone's dashboard yet. And it's trusting what you're seeing fast enough to act on it before the moment passes. Now, this is a muscle, and like any muscle, it atrophies if you stop using it. So if you've been defaulting to what does the data say, instead of what am I noticing that the data doesn't yet capture, start flipping that. Once a day, even. One meeting, one decision, one conversation where you lead with your read before you check the report. Now, the third skill I want to talk about is coaching for capability. And I want to spend a little more time on this one because I think it's the skill most managers underinvest in. Not because they don't care about it, but because the coordination work fills up the calendar before coaching ever gets scheduled. The Tableau Group recently released a workplace analysis this year that I couldn't stop thinking about. They found that 60% of senior level women experience burnout. Now, that number is not surprising, but what stopped me was this: the ambition gap, women opting out of advancement, women who stopped raising their hands, disappears entirely when women receive the same career support as men. Same support, gap gone. Think about that. Not a smaller gap, one that completely disappears. Now, there's a direct implication for managers in that finding. Your job in 2026 is not to delegate tasks, it's to develop people. The managers who survive AI disruption are the ones whose teams grow because of them. The ones who can point to specific people they moved from individual contributor to leader. AI can run your project tracker. It cannot replace the conversation that helps someone see a path they couldn't see before. That conversation is yours. And I'm saying this one here to people who could be potential sponsors, someone in a senior role developing that next generation of leaders. This is the watch out. The high potentials worth backing aren't the ones running the most efficient meetings, they're the ones whose teams are visibly growing. So if you're in that senior role right now, here's your move. Stop giving your high potentials more coordination responsibilities and give them the ambiguous calls, the stakeholder navigation, the coaching conversations with their own people. That's where the orchestration leader gets built. Not in a training program, but in the messy Tuesday afternoon call that you let them take instead of taking it yourself. Now, the last skill I want to talk about is about building the human AI hybrid team. And this one is genuinely still being figured out, which is exactly why it matters so much. How do you structure work when your team is some combination of people and AI agents? Nobody fully has this yet, which means the managers building the answer right now are creating a premium skill set. So start small with this one. In your next project kickoff, why don't you explicitly ask which parts of this project need judgment and which parts are coordination? And then assign accordingly. The AI handles coordination, your people handle judgment, and you orchestrate the handoff. Ask that question explicitly. Start there. Now, I've got 3 side by side examples to make this more concrete, because sometimes you need to see what this actually looks like, not just what it sounds like in theory. First example, your weekly team check in. The coordination manager collects status updates by Friday and spends Monday compiling them. The orchestration leader lets AI handle the status layer automatically and instead uses that time to talk with her team and ask what's blocking their growth. Same meeting slot, completely different outcome. A great second example, a new project kickoff. The coordination manager walks in with the task breakdown and timeline. The orchestration leader walks in with a different question. Which parts of this need human judgment, and which parts can we hand off to AI? One of them sets up the team to execute. The other sets them up to win. The third example is a performance review. Once again, the coordination manager presents the metrics. The orchestration leader presents the metrics, then asks, what do you see that I'm missing? So one of them is an evaluation download, and the other is a coaching conversation that changes someone's trajectory. Here's what I'm seeing the managers who are actually winning do differently. It's not abstract and it's not a personality type. Their calendars look different. I've started paying close attention to how leaders who are thriving in this transition structure their weeks, and the pattern is consistent. They've set up AI to handle the reporting layer. So the weekly status digest goes out automatically, project health is tracked in a tool, not held in one person's head, and the time they get back, it's not going to more coordination. It's going to the work that needs a human, the conversation that unlocks someone, the call on an ambiguous situation, the stakeholder navigation that can't be templated. And their one on ones look different too. One leader I follow rebuilt her team check ins to open with a 2-minute AI summary of project status. So the rest of the conversation could be about what her team members were learning, where they were stuck, and what they were ready for next. So again, that project update gets 10% of the meeting, and the growth conversation gets the other 90. Her team's performance trajectory over the next 2 quarters was measurably different from the teams being run by her peers who were still doing that status update kind of one-on-ones. And here's the thing they all have in common. They talk about their teams in terms of trajectory, not just what shipped this quarter, but who developed, who grew from individual contributor into a leader, who got pushed into a capability they didn't have a year ago. That's the metric they're tracking, and that's what they're proud of. So when you look at your calendar and point to where your best hours go, and the honest answer is judgment, coaching, and decisions, that's the shift. That's when you know you've crossed from this coordination manager into an orchestration leader, not by title, but by how you actually spend any given Tuesday. And if you're not in this seat yet, if you're still an individual contributor watching all of this and thinking, okay, but I don't have a team, I don't run one on ones, and I don't set the agenda, this still applies to you. Maybe even more, because you're building the muscle before you need it. Every time you bring your manager a pattern instead of a status update, that's orchestration thinking. Every time you flag a risk nobody asked you to track, or coach a peer through something they're stuck on, or make a judgment call on your own project instead of escalating it, you're practicing the skill that's about to become the entire job description. The ICs who get tapped for leadership next aren't the ones running the tightest project tracker. They're the ones who are already thinking like this orchestration leader before they have the title. That's the signal that gets noticed. So, all of this only matters if you do something with it. And I want to make that as simple as possible. So, I'm giving you one thing you can do this week. Pull up your calendar from the last 2 weeks and go through every meeting, every task, every deliverable, And what I want you to do is put a letter next to each one. It's either going to be a C or it's going to be a J. C is for coordination, tracking, organizing, routing, reporting. And then J is for judgment, coaching, deciding, aligning, making the call. If your calendar is more than 50% a bunch of C's, then you're training to be the wrong kind of manager. Now, pick one of those items that you assigned a C to, just one, and ask yourself, could AI handle this? If the answer is yes, prototype it this week and set up a simple AI summary for a recurring status update. Use the tracking tool that auto reports. Get that hour back. And then use that same hour for judgment work. Coach someone. Make a call you've been handing off. Have the stakeholder conversation you've been scheduling and rescheduling. Repeat that same process for 1 month. That's how the shift starts. You don't need to become an AI expert overnight, and you don't need to rebuild your management approach from scratch. And you don't need to be doing this perfectly. You just need to start asking one question every time something lands on your plate. Is this coordination or judgment? And then start protecting which one gets your best hours. And that's it. One question changes everything about how you allocate your time. And if you want to go deeper on this, every Thursday I send a newsletter that turns the framework from that week's episode into something you can actually use. A template, an audit, a script you can run. This week's issue actually gets into the ambition data that everyone's misreading. Are you actually less ambitious? Or did you just stop betting on a system that wasn't paying you back? Link is in the show notes. Takes 30 seconds to subscribe. Okay, before I let you go, remember this. Back in January, Gardner said 20% of companies would use AI to eliminate over half of their middle management. And here's what I think that actually means 80% of companies won't do that right now. And the 20% who do, they're not eliminating managers, they're eliminating the parts of management that should have been automated a decade ago. The manager who won't exist in 2027 is the one who's spending their best hours on what a piece of software can do faster. The one who will exist, who will thrive in this new world, is the one who knows what only she can do, what she can bring to the table, and who is spending her Tuesdays doing exactly that. That's you. That's who you're building towards. And you don't need permission to start. You just need to start. So do that calendar audit, find your first swap from coordination to judgment, and pay attention to how it feels when you spend an hour on the work that actually needs you, not the work that just needed someone. I'm Molly Jaggers, and this is Protege. I'll see you next week.